Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on language and the brain. I'm Karen Taylor of the Color Vowel chart. This is our 3-day webinar series. We're so excited to have you here. This is the first of 3. I'm going to show you briefly about those. Today's talk is ESL, literacy, and the brain. Tomorrow, in case you don't already know, we'll be talking about word walls, and let me get my spotlight there, word walls and bulletin boards. And right over here is on Friday, we'll be exploring ways for learners to write the first books that they read. All of these are happening at the same time of day, 3 days in a row, and you're receiving my emails, I believe, with those links. So do let us know if you have any questions about that. I want to welcome folks into the room. Let's take a look at our chat. We'll spend just a couple of minutes here getting to know one another. Take a look over there in the chat. See if you find anyone in common with you. Maybe they're from the same place or they teach the same kinds of learners. Okay. Great. So we've got Elizabeth in Arizona. Welcome. Thanks for being the first to post. Good to see you, Deanna. It's been a while. So glad to see your
Yeah, I see some former students. Hi, Amina. Hi, Deanna. Am I missing anybody?
Great. Karen, Laura, wonderful. And we're curious to know who you teach, what kind of context you teach in. All of those things are relevant. It helps us answer your questions. As we get started, I'd like to introduce a couple of people. I'll introduce Dr. Barr last because she's our speaker today. But in the room, we've got Jennifer Campion. And Jennifer, can you just turn on your camera, wave your hand to prove that you're not a bot? There we go. She's not a bot. She's Jennifer Campion. So Jennifer Campion is here to answer all questions and to help you with anything you want to achieve with us. She'll be submitting or posting links in the chat for you that will help you follow up on your interests. Okay. Also in the room, I think I might look for introductions later, but Lynn Swanda might be in the room. And if you're here, you can raise your hand and say hello. Lynn will be speaking tomorrow. And Jennifer is actually our featured speaker on Friday. So that's pretty exciting. Okay. We've got folks in the room. One thing I would like to make sure of is that, well, you're receiving my emails. That's all. I just want you to say, if you got the link for today's session, then you are receiving my emails. And it's always good to check those settings. With no further ado, I would like to go ahead and introduce Dr. Barr. Dr. Robin Barr is our speaker today. She has a long lifetime of experience with linguistics, phonology. She completed her PhD at Harvard University. She has a wonderful wealth of diversity of work experience where she's taught. Raise your hand in the room if you've studied phonology with Dr. Barr at American University. A lot of us have. It can be a virtual hand. Maybe you've been to the Washington Literacy Center where she works with troubled readers, adult readers. And so a lot of us know the Washington Literacy Center. Maybe you know her from the Washington English Center. All of these are places where Dr. Barr has worked and combined her expertise in phonology and linguistics with the practical applications of working with English learners and with English learners who have trouble reading. So this might be why you're here today, is that you work with English learners. Maybe you work with English learners who have difficulty with some aspect of the written word. This is what we're interested in today. In fact, it's our interest all week. Okay. This week, everything relates to the written word, the spoken word, and how we can bridge those two so that they're more connected and less of what seems like a random relationship. Some people might call pronunciation of English crazy, or they'll call spelling crazy. One way or the other, we think of one of them as crazy. And today and this week, we're going to aim to eliminate crazy and talk about connection. Okay. Hi, Robin. You're kind of laughing, but it's all
Well,
true.
yeah, eliminate the crazy. I don't know. Well,
we take the crazy out of the English language, but we put a lot of fun and soul into it. We are English Language Training Solutions. We are a teacher-built company that provides professional development to curious teachers. and that includes curious teachers in school systems, but also a lot of individuals around the world. So if you've already studied with us some, say something in the chat. Let people know what you've done with us and how that has been valuable to you. Okay. Dr. Barr, I'd like to turn the table over to you, so to say, and welcome you to today's talk.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. I've been told not to get too excited, but this is one of my favorite things. So if I start to talk too fast or max out your loudspeakers, let me know. But what I want to do is I want to dive right into the brain. All right, because brains are my favorite thing. So let me share this with you. So English learner literacy and the brain is my topic today. And let me close this so I can see better. Okay, so I want to first start out by saying that my ideas about the brain have been largely influenced by these 3 books, which I found very helpful and inspiring, giving me lots of ideas about how to approach the problem of the reader who is failing to thrive. Okay, so what is going on in the brain when you read, and what can go wrong in the brain when you read. My first encounter with this was Howard Gardner, before he was famous, wrote a book. He was working at the Boston VA with people with aphasia and other head injuries, and returned veterans with bullet wounds and head wounds and things like that, back in 1976. And it's a fascinating read. It's all about what happens when one part of the brain or another is disturbed, is disrupted. And he developed this idea greatly into something called multiple intelligences. Frames of Mind is the copyright here, 1983, but he also has a more modern edition, I think 2011, something like that, which is updated. And then a third book that I've gotten a lot out of is Proust and the Squid by Marianne Wolf, who used to run the reading I guess institute at Tufts, and now she's emeritus. But she and I, when I was in New England, we were in the New England Child Language Association together. But she has now branched off into dyslexia, and she has some really interesting claims about why dyslexia works the way it does and where does it come from. So a lot of my thinking on this subject has been influenced by these books. So I wanted to tell you that this is the context that I'm operating in. So some of you are already familiar with the notion of multiple intelligences, but the Howard Gardner has posited that there are basically several different intelligences or modules in the brain that you can outsource particular kinds of problems to. So they're like the experts that live inside your head, that whose job it is to do a particular kind of thing. And he's up to 9, maybe 10 intelligences or modules in the brain. This was based on the localization he discovered in the head injury patients back in 1976, where if you disrupt one area of the brain, then speech is affected. If you disrupt some other area of the brain, then your spatial ability is affected, and so on. So the first intelligence, and the one we're going to be looking at a lot today, is the verbal intelligence, where language is processed. And this is on the left side of the brain. So this is the top of your head. So the left hemisphere is here in brown, and your verbal processor is sometimes known as Broca's area. You might have heard it called that, or the speech language area. So this was the first intelligence that he developed. I'm going to work on the left side of the brain next. So on the left side of the brain is also the logical mathematical area where your brain breaks things apart. It does analysis. So it likes to find patterns in things. It likes to see if it can make big things smaller and basically dissolve long things into shorter pieces. So take apart a word, take apart a sound, take apart a math problem, however you want to look at it. But this is the part where you segment large things into smaller bits. Also, extending into the left side of the brain is the visual area. So in the occipital lobe, in the back of your head, everybody touch the back of your head, right? Okay, you got it. So it extends both into the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere governs the right visual field. The right hemisphere governs the left visual field. There are evolutionary reasons for this, which I'm not going to get into, but it seems crazy, like you said, Karen, but it does eventually make some sense. And then there's the sensory motor strip, which the motor strip is across the top of the head in the frontal lobe, and the sensory strip is across the top of the head in the parietal lobe. So everybody touch your sensory motor strip. So it goes from one side of the brain to the other. And the left side of the sensory motor strip controls the right side of the body, and the right side of the sensory motor strip controls the left side of the body. This is why if you're injured on the left side of your brain, your right arm and leg will be affected, right? And vice versa, if you're injured in the right side of your brain, your left arm and leg will be affected, or if you have a stroke in those areas. So now I'm going to see, well, what are the other intelligences that Gardner has added? So we want to get up to 9. So the first one here is on the right side of the brain, almost corresponding, almost mirroring the verbal area, is the musical area. This is the part of the brain that does nonverbal sounds and lights up when you hear music. Also on the right side of the brain are the two emotional areas, the intrapersonal and interpersonal areas of expertise. So intrapersonal is awareness of yourself. Interpersonal is awareness of others. There's also an area that we're not really sure where it is. It's called natural intelligence. Some people call it a common sense intelligence. This is what allows you to identify objects, items in the real world. So what is this tool? It's a screwdriver. How many legs does a duck have? Can you tell paper from plastic? Things like that have to do with categorization of items. And then underneath this little cloud here, underneath actually on both sides, but primarily on the right side of the brain, is where you have face recognition. Okay, so some people have face blindness. I do, for example. I have a hard time recognizing people. I've been known to not recognize my daughter and my husband, for example, and it's also called prosopagnosia, and I'm part of a study which tries to decide is it genetic or not. And I think my grandmother also had it. But these are the 9 basic intelligences. There's some thought of adding another one, a spiritual intelligence. I don't know if it's been well supported yet. All of the ones up here are pretty well supported and localized. There are case studies of what happens when you don't have it, and where it can go wrong, and everybody has a different profile. So there's nobody who is 100% in all of these. You have some people are really good at the verbal area and not so good at well, face recognition, like me. Or my husband is really good at logical, mathematical, and face recognition, but he has no natural intelligence at all. So there's lots of room for variation. And one of the things we're going to be talking about today is people who are not as not as comfortable using the intelligences on the left side of the brain as they are the intelligences on the right side of the brain. So a lot that fits a lot of the students I'm talking about. So my question to you is, we have 9 intelligences here. Which ones are for reading? Put your guesses in the chat. Let's see what you think. Pick up to 3. Which ones you want to use for reading? Can you tell me what it says in the chat? Because I can't see the chat from here, Karen.
We had one person say all, and one person who said verbal, visual, logical. They're coming in so fast. Verbal, visual, motor, visual, spatial. Let's see, motor, sensory, logical. Usually it's some combination of those. Natural.
Well, I can imagine you would use a lot of them when you're reading content, right? Because you want to involve the whole brain. But for the technical process of reading, I guess I should be more specific. So where is the reading intelligence? There is no single intelligence that's for reading. There's one for music, right? And there's one for kind of for math. Why don't we have one for reading? Well, that's because reading is not part of the innate equipment that we're born with, or that that we've evolved towards. This is reading has sort of a secondary function and we've kind of cobbled together a way of dealing with it, so that each child, when they look at a text for the first time, or that they're taught to read, they develop their own method of their own strategies for how to approach it, and we'll see which ones work best and which ones don't. So these are the ones we usually consider to be the ones that are used for reading in English, and that's the verbal area, obviously because it's language, the visual and spatial area, because obviously we're reading in order to we're looking at something visual in order to do the reading part. This is a visual representation of speech. So it's a visual representation of speech, but we've got this other area in the middle. Why logical mathematical, do you think? Think about that. That's something that we're going to be getting to. Why do we need logical mathematical? So what's happening in the brain when you read? Let's take an example here. So imagine that we're reading English. We have here the visual spatial area, the logical mathematical area, the verbal area. This is an actual scan of a normal reader. What parts of the brain light up when you're reading? So as I said, there's no innate reading intelligence. We're looking at this from the above. Each person constructs their own process for reading based on what their brain finds the easiest or most efficient way of solving the problem. It's very, very individual. It varies depending on what intelligences each person is good at or prefers, and also how the language that they're using represents words. So notice, however, that the path is, they're all adjacent to each other. And if you're reading, it's very efficient to go from the visual to through the logical to the verbal. Okay. What if somebody were to take a different path? Okay? What if somebody decided to go walkabout, to go off somewhere else? It might not be as efficient. Right? Let's take a look at an example. So suppose you see the word sheep, SHEEP. So you see that with the visual area. Then you identify graphemes. That is, you use the analytic area here, the logical mathematical area. You break apart the word into not individual letters, but into individual combinations of letters that you have learned go together, that you have learned represent a sound. So, for example, the SH together is different from an S plus an H, right? SH is a digraph. It's two sounds that go together that that you would pronounce as a single sound, a sh. Similarly, the two E's together are not two sounds, but rather the sound E as a single sound. And then the letter P at the end represents one sound. So I've taken apart the word into its component graphemes, and now I can translate these graphemes, each grapheme I can translate into a sound, a speech sound. So the first sound is sh, second sound is E, the third sound is p. And so now I say sheep. So far, so good. And if I recognize this word when I say it, bang, I see a sheep, or I imagine a sheep, step 4, right? We don't know where this happens. When we try to identify where in the brain different words are located, or different concepts are located, we get everything lighting up all over the place. So the lexicon seems to be represented in the brain in lots of different places. It may be accessed through what's called Wernicke's area, which is over here in the left hemisphere, but we're not even sure of that. So I don't know where to put the sheep, and maybe each person has their sheep in a different part of their brain. But whatever it is, when you say to yourself sheep, then ideally you will imagine this creature here. So you will identify the word and its meaning, and you will have had successful reading, I guess it's what I would say. Right. So now I have questions for you. So why do I keep saying reading English? How is English different from other languages in how you would have to read it? Is English harder to read than other languages? Are some languages harder to read than English? Karen, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, while we're asking that question, I'd like to just visit a couple of questions from the chat. Rosa asked a question
Sure.
from the previous slide that I think is worth really looking at. When she asked, is sheep the number 4, if you go back to number 4 there, yeah,
Yeah.
is that the visual spatial? The
Oh,
meaning,
well, yeah, the information is combined. I mean, maybe you have a picture of a sheep in your head, but I'm using this this photo here as I guess a symbol of the meaning of sheep. So whatever you think sheep means, you know,
hmm.
a woolly ungulate,
So if you
fine,
were, yeah,
whatever. You
if
might
one
have a
was,
picture of it, or you
yeah, if
might
one
not.
was blind, Robin, if a person was blind, but they knew sheep because they knew sheep, right? Because they work with them.
Right. It might be represented differently. Like you might have some kind of way of feeling it, or spatial. You might have a spatial idea of it, but without visual information. That's a really good question. So yeah, I'm thinking of number 4 as not the picture of a sheep, but the concept of sheep. If that helps, the semantics of sheep maybe would be a better way of putting it. There was another question.
No, I think that's a good place to continue. Thank you.
Okay. So are there any suggestions of languages that are harder than English, or languages that are easier than English? Anybody have any ideas about that? Has anybody written anything in the chat about that?
Yeah, so let's see here. A lot of people. Up. But it's okay, we're all catching up. So let's see here. So tonal, Patty says, are tonal languages like Chinese harder? Do they use the music area? That'd be a good one to kind of address. And I'll look
Oh
at
yeah,
the
that's a really interesting one. They don't they use it when they speak, but they don't use it when they read because they don't indicate it
right.
when they read. It's but that's a really interesting question. By Chinese, I'm talking about the ones with characters, not the pinyin system, which is alphabetic. But so you're saying that maybe Chinese is harder to read than English because it's characters. What would make that harder? Why would characters be harder than an alphabetic system?
Yeah. Lynn mentions that Thai uses characters to note tones.
Uh-huh.
Maybe that would create the visual load, make it harder.
Anybody mention Japanese or Hittite?
No, nobody mentioned Hittite, Robin. Not yet.
It works like so in Hittite you have the basic cuneiform, and then you have acadagrams, and then you have samaragrams. You got three different kinds of symbols, and the same thing is in Japanese. You have a couple of different syllabaries plus the kanji, which is borrowed from Chinese, so that makes it more complex.
So what I'm hearing so far in reading in the comments is we can all describe how a given language is complex, but are we
Yeah.
getting a sense that one is particularly harder than the others when it comes to reading? Are there any languages that are easier to learn to read? How about we go in that direction? Just
So
curious.
we talked about different alphabets and different writing systems. What if you have an alphabetic system like English? Are there some languages that are easier to read than English?
Yeah. So, so Elena wrote that the association, let's see, of background knowledge with new input affects the language perception and understanding, especially for adult learners.
That's
Cindy
true.
comments, there are oodles of languages that are easier to read if you're coming from English. I think that's what you're with the
Okay.
assumption, right?
Okay. So
Uh,
alphabetic systems that are easier than English. Why? What makes learning to read English hard? What makes English harder than other languages in this way? Let's
and
hear
then,
some good
yeah.
suggestions. And
And so
Kara, you
then,
can
and
write
then
them down as
Rose
we go.
mentioned Spanish, that Spanish is easy.
Spanish is the classic example of that's an easy language. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, many high school students have discovered it's not as easy as advertised. Yeah.
And Jennifer, just to clarify, says we're not talking about reading aloud. That's correct. Right now, we're talking about the essence of reading, being able to look at print and make meaning from it. And I think,
Although you're right that reading aloud is part of it, right?
yeah.
If you don't know how to pronounce the word, then how will you recognize it?
And that's
Is
often how we assess reading skills is by having someone read a word aloud
right.
at those basic levels. That's great. Good. Well, what can we say, Robin? What can we say about?
Well, it says here that Karen will write what's in the chat in this box.
Well,
Uh,
magically, it's mostly summarized on slide 12. Why don't we move along?
okay, why don't we do that?
Here's some of
So
the reasons.
here are some of the reasons that I've encountered before. So people say there's so many irregular spellings. Okay, by irregular, what do we mean by irregular? It doesn't follow the rules. That's what irregular means. But are there rules for English spelling? Well, there are a few. There are some. There are some correspondences that usually exist. So usually the letter A represents the sound A, except when it doesn't, when it represents the sound A. But that's about it. There are sight words to memorize, so words that are hard to spell. So they are exceptions, or they have extra extra sounds in them. You can't tell where the stress is. So you look at record and you look at record, there is no way to tell which one you have, at least not in our normal writing system. English has sounds that might not exist in the learner's native language, so it would be hard for the learner to read it because they can't pronounce it. Or maybe the student is coming from a language that uses a different alphabet, right? or maybe the student never did learn to read in the native language. So these are all things that I've encountered. Is there anything that I'm leaving out that I've missed?
English is very unpredictable. You never know
Unpredictable,
what to
that's a good one.
expect. Yeah, I
Right,
think that's true. We have so many loan words, right?
loan words. So we've got words from lots of different sources that have their own spelling systems. So French is different from Latin, is different from Greek, is different from Tibetan. So I'm trying to think of something that's really difficult. So yeah, so lots of spelling traditions that we haven't regularized into our English spelling system. So we've just borrowed them as written. That's true. Okay. So so we just talked about what's hard about spoken English. So a lot of what's difficult about learning to read English has to do with why the spoken language is hard for learners. So the sounds of the learner's first language is different from the sound of English, or the rhythm of the learner's first language is different from the rhythm of English. We talked about how we don't mark where the stress is, but even having stress or even where the stress is located also affects how the vowels sound. So you might have two words like photo and photographer that are spelled the same at the beginning, photo and photographer, but depending on where the stress is, you're going to be pronouncing those two O's differently. So the rhythm affects how the vowels sound, and that's a crucial part of how to read the language. Let's get deeper into spelling. So English orthography is deep. There's a big mismatch between the sound and the letters. I would like you in the chat to write one of your favorite words that is difficult to spell. So
That'll be difficult to now that you've asked us to think of difficult words, we're going to think of all the easy words.
yeah,
right?
think of a difficult word, and let's have a couple examples.
All right. All right, I started it off with thorough. Someone was kind enough to write diarrhea, which is hard to spell. It's true. Friend, seemingly
Oh,
simple.
friend is a good one. Yeah.
Great one. Colleague, that's a fun one.
Yeah, I always had trouble with friend.
Eight. Thank you, Cindy. We were waiting for supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Yes.
And look at all the homonyms too, right? 8 and 8.
Yeah.
Right. So I was the homonym queen of third grade. I had
Shelley contributed Colonel, of course, like a Colonel.
Colonel is a nice one. Yeah. So let's take a look at one of the problems. Can you predict the pronunciation given the spelling? Can you predict the spelling given the pronunciation? And the answer to both is not 100%. In fact, sometimes not at all. So this would be a classic type of assignment, a unit. What are all the names of your relatives? And if you have this as your vocabulary list, you take it home. How are you going to remember how to pronounce each word? How might you pronounce the first word? Familia. What is going on?
That's
Karen,
me.
are you doing something?
I'm in there. That's
Okay, so mother, mot her, fat her.
yeah, exactly. So Patty just wrote in and said, yeah, so let's use the color vowel chart.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. So one of the
too.
things that we can do, which Karen is about to do for us, is identify instead something that is helpful is find the stress vowel. So in family, we have 3 syllables: family, family, and I'm moving my hand on the stress syllable in order to make sure I say it long enough and with enough emphasis. And what color is this word? Family. Ah. So we're going to underline ah. What is the color of that word? Any suggestions in the chat?
Oh, we have some black. We've got lots
Black.
of short
Okay,
people.
black cat.
But just to say, we have folks watching this video that's recorded as well as live now who are new to the color vowel chart. And I want
Right.
you to know that you're absolutely, part of this group, meaning we take an inductive approach to the chart. So don't feel like, whoa, I didn't learn about this. If you're new to it, go ahead and relax and watch how this works. You'll pick it up quickly, right? So yes, black,
So
cat,
learn by using.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What about mother? Mother. What is the sound of the O in mother? What is that?
We'll do it just a
Suggestions.
few of these. We had a couple, a lot of answers around mustard, exactly. So
Mustard.
mother, mother. We can do
And
that.
we've got another couple of mustards in number 7, cousin, and number 8, uncle. Okay. What what about father? Ah. So,
There we go.
so
Father, olive. Good
so
job.
in my dialect it's olive. Um,
Okay.
and how about number 8? Is it aunt, black cat aunt, or olive sock aunt, or even auburn dog aunt?
Yeah, I love this one. Folks are answering with olive, but Kathy notes that her mother uses Auburn. And I'll mention Shirley. I know she's coming soon, my co-author, but and she grew up in a family where one side of the family had, an aunt, let's call it Aunt Julie, and the other side of the family, she had an aunt, an Aunt Mary or whatever that was. So
Yeah,
she
my
did
daughter
both.
Lucy has an Aunt Lori from Chicago, who I think I saw briefly appearing on the screen, and an Aunt Rachel from Boston. So they're different kinds of relatives, right?
So
So is it
yeah, this
okay if
kind
we
of gets
move
at the
on?
issue, right?
Say that again, Karen.
I said this gets at the issue pretty succinctly. I think what we'd like to do is sort of come to the aha on our next slide. Yeah, this really we start to see with new eyes, the eyes of a learner, how why would they know how these sound,
So
right?
look at the first row here. We have lots of O's, but think about how each one is pronounced. So say them along with me. So 1, 2, go, stop, how, woman, women.
And here I'm just using the color vowel images instead of writing out these words. So it starts to turn into something a little bit like the images that are the symbols that are used elsewhere, only these are graphic symbols and not letter symbols.
Woman and women. Look at that. The difference is in the spelling is at the end of the word, but the difference in pronunciation is at the beginning of the word, right? So we have uh, both mustard 1, blue moon 2, rose boat go, olive sock stop, brown cow how, wooden hook woman, silver pin women. Okay. What about the next row? So we have a many to one correspondence here for many different sounds. We have one spelling. What about in the next line? This is just the opposite. We have one sound and many spellings. What sound is that?
Can now just commented the letter O is always a troublemaker. I like that comment.
Yeah, so here we have blue moon spelled UEOO, just plain O, EWOE, just plain U, and then OU. Lots of different ways of spelling the sound ooh. Now there are some regularities too, especially when you get to a fairly frequent or simple words, but that doesn't always work. There are lots of words that students want to be able to use that are useful for them to use that aren't regular enough, and a lot of phonics programs will say that these words are taboo. Basically, they're illegal. Or they're special words that have to be learned in a different way and can't be learned at the beginning. So that's one of the issues. what I want to talk about today is based on my research. I have been working at the Washington Literacy Center for I think about 7 years now, and 5 years ago, the Washington English Center, which is a English language teaching organization, uh, asked me for help. So I was working with adult English language dyslexics at the Washington Literacy Center, and Washington English Center had a medium-sized cohort of students, which you could say they were failing to thrive. Is maybe the best way of putting it. They were repeating the level 1 or the intro, the basic class, over and over and over again because they couldn't get out of basic because they couldn't read. And they got better and better at the spoken language, but they were stuck because they couldn't get past the test, the exit test, to move on to a level 2. And so they were diligent students. They came regularly. They worked hard, but there was something blocking them from continuing. So they asked me to come, and I taught a class with them in it for. I'm still teaching that class, or variants of people have come and gone, but I'm still teaching that population, and I was trying to figure out what went wrong. So why are they having trouble, and how can we help them? And I'm not going to tell you all the things we tried that didn't work, but I do want to talk about the things that did work. And a lot of what helped me figure out what was happening was the research that I'd been doing otherwise in how language is processed in the brain. So knowing about how language works in the brain, it helped me work out how what has disrupted the reading process that we looked at before, going from the word sheep to the image of the sheep. And I found 3 different types of problems. Some students had more than one type, but I want to give you examples of each type. So let me go to type 1. The struggling reader type 1 is the one that I would say their problem is mainly caused by phonological differences between English and their first language. Okay, so we talked about how having a different set of sounds might create problems. This is the kind of thing that happened. So the class is sounding out 3-letter words, including this word RUB, and the student is doing as directed. They take the first sound and they translate it to the first letter. They translate it to a sound. So the letter R goes with the letter U goes with the letter B goes with b. Right. So we've got she did very well with the symbol to sound correspondence, and she says rub. Right. So now what's supposed to happen is she's supposed to recognize the word, and so we're trying to define the word rub. And she says, "Oh, like I rub you." So what do you think she was trying to? What did you think? What word do you think she thought this was?
Love. I love you. That's
Love.
what many
Yeah.
people.
So it took us a while to work this out, because I was saying, "I rub you." What do you mean I rub you? What, like this? And she said, "Yeah, like this." And so after a lot of confusion and embarrassment, we did figure out that she was interpreting the word as love. Why? Well, one of the things that will help you figure out why is that this student is a native speaker of Thai. Okay, so in Thai, L and R merge, and also the B and the V merge. So love and rub would be pronounced the same for her. So she started out fine with the in the visual cortex. reading these letters, and she divided up into 3 letters, R, U, B. Good, so far so good. She connected them with the sounds b, but then she's a rub, love, rub. Oh, she didn't know which of the many rubs that she could have had in her head it might be, and it turned out it was a new word for her. It was not. It was a lot rarer than the word love was, but rub was the closest that she came to it. Now imagine what would happen. What would be the consequence of this kind of problem, right? If you were always mistaking one word for another, that's even more homophones than English naturally has, right? So you're adding a whole bunch of homophones. Something similar could happen if you were a Spanish speaker. So you see the word sheep, sheep, and you divide it into the digraphs, or the graphemes. So we have sh and then ee and then p. So far so good. We say sheep, but when you say sheep, what does it mean? Does it mean this animal, sheep, or does it mean the boat, sheep? So maybe you say them the same, right? So if you don't recognize the word, or if you aren't familiar with the word, then your reading will fail. So because the Spanish speaker merges the vowels green e and silver I, the words sheep and ship would sound the same to them, and they wouldn't know which one to pick. So even these words which are decodable, right? These are not irregular words at all, but they still struggle because you can't recognize a word that you don't already know. Think about that.
Yeah, Barb mentioned something here. She said we were learning the shocks in the car, as a student asked, but what about the shocks in the ocean? And he
Yeah,
meant
shocks.
the
Yeah,
shocks,
the shocks and sharks.
the
Yeah,
shark.
that's a lovely one. I love it. So if you know the word shark, and you pronounce it shock, and you're learning the word shock, and you of course you would confuse the two, and we all have funny stories about how learners might combine might mistake one word for another. But if you don't know the word, then that's going to be hard for you to figure out.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to welcome once again, folks have been, a couple of people have been arriving later. So just to kind of come into the fray here, we've just finished up with our first learner type when it comes to troubled readers or readers who struggle. And we have Dr. Barr here talking with us. This is a good time to take sort of burning questions from that first example or from the first part of the talk. And so we'll take a couple, and then I'd like to share some information with you before we continue with our second learner type. Robin, I know I got a question that I just copied here from the group from Jilson, who asked, maybe this is not a now question, but we can start to explore it. Is there a difference between ooh and you, meaning ooh like the word to, and you as in the word music? Is there any way to predict the sound of that you when you're decoding?
Partly, yeah. So American English has a rule that gets rid of the y after what are called coronal consonants. So where British English would, for all the so-called long vowels in you, like music and tune and what's another one? Muse. No, I think it's news and so forth. American English instead has it still has music, but tune. Okay, so that's one way to predict the pronunciation, but the pronunciation with a y is based on borrowing the u symbol, the letter u spellings from French, where I'm always saying blame it on the French, but so the sound, the spelling U in French was actually a high front vowel that was rounded, so it's E, and which was interpreted as U by the English speakers. That's why the spelling U has a extra E involved.
Wonderful. Couple of neat comments, Phoenix. I want to thank you. I said, I love the quote that we just had up. I'm always trying to explain that concept that you can't, it's hard to read something if you don't know what that thing means in the first place. I agree that the quote's better than the way I just said it.
Yeah. Well, it was a big deal in my classroom because I was using one of the proprietary phonics programs, a Wilson reading program. And the problem is that in the Wilson reading program, all of the consonant, vowel, consonant words that we were using were rare words. And I got really sick of having to act out rub and jig and wag and, things like that aren't anything that they're likely to encounter. And yet they weren't able, I wasn't able to teach them words that they wanted to know, like house, So I found the color vowel system was really, really helpful in helping me organize the sight words, the ones that were so-called illegal. And you'll see some examples of my word wall probably tomorrow, right? When Karen does the
when Lynn and I meet to talk about
when Lynn and you do the word wall.
Exactly. Folks, I just want you to know we are planning to meet today until we have about 40 more minutes. And you will get some follow-up information, but I want you to know that Robin is going to be giving a workshop that extends on this topic. It's a 4-hour workshop. It's in February. And I just want you to be
I have
aware
a lot more to say.
She has a lot more to say, and we have a lot more that you can do with her when we have these workshops. So you can just mark your calendar for February 23rd. Just know that that's there from 1 to 5. And during this week basically until December 22nd, we're offering a nice coupon for 20% off that workshop. And Jennifer's over in the chat and giving you a link for that. Just because this is a deep topic, right? We start getting into the why, and we still have so much more to talk about with respect to the how. How are we going to reach learners now that we know more about what's happening in the brain? So every one of these insights leads to more of those kinds of questions. I also wanted you to know that we have our Color Vowel conference coming up in the spring. So, you can start piecing together your events with us. But this one's special because it's face-to-face. And if you're in the DC area, especially, you might be, attracted to this. But also we have folks coming from all over the world. Now is here in the room coming from Japan. I know, Gilson, you're working on it, right? Getting that visa. And, we hope to see you there in Washington, DC. We're going to have such a great time. So mark your calendars there and watch for those communications. Okay. Great. Any other comments and questions from this first part? Otherwise, I think we might just continue for our second learner type, Robin.
Okay,
The first one, just to summarize, I think Jennifer sort of summarized, but let's just make sure we know. The first learner type is struggling with differences between the sounds of their language, the sounds of English, and that added piece of in English, like rub.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't recognize a word. Where to go? You can't recognize a word that you don't already know. Yeah. And that's added to words that are homophonous with other existing words using, because they use a sound that is not in that might be merged in your own that's not distinguished or not distinctive in your own native language. That's probably the best way to put it. Okay. So reader type 2. So I call them pre-literate, and there's as if this is even before literacy. There's a disconnect between writing and communication. This is something that we take for granted in this culture. Every kid, even before kindergarten, knows that books say words, but people who are coming from a culture that perhaps the women aren't expected to read, or they don't go to school, or they've had interrupted schooling, or there's been warfare in their country, and they haven't, and they're refugees, and they haven't been able to have any kind of organized education. So I have here, here's one of the solutions that I've come up with for for not knowing a word that you can spell. What I've done is I've been collecting little objects for the classroom, and this is pre-literate, right? I do not write down these words at first, but they are all or mostly words that are easy to spell, that are regular in spelling. So even if I can't have a picture of a jig or rub or whatever, I can have a picture of a fish and a concept of a car or a cob. I can use those words now that we have the objects that go with them. So each one of these, I've sort of assembled them by color vowel articulatory position. So up here, what vowel do you think this is? I've got a shirt, a purple shirt, and some turtles. What is this sound?
You gave it away, Robin, with the
Oh,
purple
I'm
shirt.
sorry, purple shirt. Yeah, you're right.
That's okay. We'll do the kind of quick kitchen version, the cooking show
Yeah,
version will be fast.
yeah. I've got a fish and a whistle over here and a pig, and I can't quite figure that one out. Yeah, so that's silver pin. Right.
Yep.
I've got a cob and a rock and a lollipop and a sock and a box and a car and a shark. That's going to be our olive sock. And up here I have a kazoo and glue and a purple ruler. So that's our blue moon. Over here I have a rose and a bowl. I can't see what else is here, but that's going to be rose boat. And leaving the last one here, I've got a duck and a truck and a button and nuts and so forth. That's our cup of mustard, right? So, I use these because even before we start reading, I'm activating phonological awareness by having the students identify the vowels that these words have in common, right? This is something that's part of reading readiness or phonological awareness. How can we help the students segment the syllable and understand what the vowel is even before they learn how to write it? And in fact, being able to write the vowel is less useful in English than it is in some other languages. So they learn English with these words, and they act out stories or actions, or they classify them, or they find the words that rhyme, or the lots of things we can do before we ever write down any of the words. Okay, so these objects share a common vowel sound. We've already decided they were cup of mustard, truck, duck, bus, nuts, button, and monkey. And yeah, the what we were doing in the classroom was we were making sentences using these words. So I would like you to make up some sentences using these words, and the other words that you can use are just function words, like you can have put, you can have is, you could have prepositions like in, on. So what Karen will write them on the page. Are you seeing any?
Or either that or we'll put them in the chat. I just added one in the chat. That monkey is nuts for trucks.
That's hard to act out, though. If you could have something we can act out, that would be helpful.
Oh, and that's pretty idiomatic. That nuts,
Yeah.
crazy, right? Is
Yeah,
nuts
so
about.
I would rather have something you could act out. So give me somebody come up with one we could act out.
The duck is in the truck
Okay, I like it.
with nuts.
With nuts.
That's nice.
Okay, I've seen trucks with nuts. It's not really
Good. Let's see. We had the monkey and the duck jumped on the truck. The duck.
Oh, I like that. We've got a verb with cup of mustard.
What about put the button on the bus? There was some question as to whether we'd want to avoid put, or is it okay to put?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we're not writing it down, so what do I
Ha.
care how you spell put, right?
Yeah, so these are all oral sentences. These are,
Yeah.
yeah, remember that.
We do move later, so put becomes one of our sight words, and uh we transition to the written word eventually, but no, we start out just orally, and we act out, so that they're learning the prepositions, they're learning the phrases, and they're learning which words go with which, and they act it out. So this is all very multimodal. Um, so you have put the button in the truck, put the monkey on the bus, put the nut on the button, and here's the one I'm talking about now. Put the duck on the truck. Okay, so my student, struggling reader 2, she can tell someone put the duck on the truck, and she can follow the instructions if somebody tells her to put the duck on the truck. So she understands the English, the spoken English, and she can read it aloud. She can decode put. Well, she can read the word put because she knows it, and she knows the word the, and then she can sound out duck. She can um, sound out on. She knows the word the, and she can sound out truck. So she was pretty good at the symbol to sound correspondences. But if you hand her something that says put the duck on the truck, she doesn't know what to do. She can't do it. She can say it aloud, but she cannot interpret those as telling her as instructions to put the duck on the truck when she says it. And when
Robin,
yeah,
this reminds me
explain
of Mad Gabs. Like when we do this for fun, right? Like we're reading something and we can't hear if anybody knows Mad Gabs, it's when strange
Yeah.
things are written, but if you read them out loud, someone else can understand them.
Right. She can't understand herself when she reads it.
That's
Isn't that?
that's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
It's
Okay. And she also doesn't know what to put it if we have a template like put the blank on the blank. She doesn't even understand what to put in the blanks, and she just writes the. That's what she did. What the heck is going on here? Right. Um, and I'll let you think about that for a second, but this is one of the things that just baffled me for a long time until I realized what was going on. This is her process. So she can recognize the letters. So she's got the first step. She can divide them up into the graphemes. She can pronounce the grapheme. She can say duck, and then nothing happens. So when she says duck, it's not when she says duck, when she reads it, it's not conveying anything linguistic to her. It's not conveying that concept to her. She doesn't, for some reason, she is not connecting. She doesn't understand that what's written has anything to do with what's spoken. It's a really basic connection that we get very early on in our socialization, and she never had. She didn't realize that what's written on these mysterious things that are on signs and billboards and books have anything to do with the stories that people tell. And what made a huge difference to her was one day she came into the classroom, and she was kind of excited. She had a story to tell us. She said, guess what happened yesterday? And she told this story about how she was picking up her grandchildren at school, and it was raining cats and dogs, I remember, and there were all these like flooded streets and things, and her grandson messed with a beehive that was stuck under a rock, and the bees came out and chased them home. And so she told the story. I said, wait a minute, let me write it down. So I wrote down what she said, and we went over it and with the class. I mean, I wasn't planning to write down anything. I had a different lesson plan in mind, but she was excited about this, and she wanted to tell the class about what happened, and she told it in English, and we wrote the story, and she took the story and she read it over and over and over and over and over and over and over
And again.
and again. uh, and uh, uh, and we have other books that she's written too that she reads over and over. I mean, she rehearses them to herself. This was her story. We titled it Hosna and the Bees, and I found some pictures to go with it. She says, yesterday I went to get Ajahn and Sonia and go home. Water was coming next to the street. A big rock was sitting next to the water. A bee house was under the rock. No, Ajahn, don't touch. Ajahn touched under the rock. He touched the beehive. We told her the word hive at that point. Many bees were coming. 3 bees touched my head and stung me. 3 bees stung Ajahn. 2 bees stung Sonia. Sonia was crying. Ajahn was crying. I picked up Sonia and ran home very fast. I went home in 1.5 minutes. That's fast. Yeah. This was her story, and that's what made her make the connection. Was this connection between, again, starting with the oral form, what she says can be represented in writing. So instead of taking the written form as primary, we take the spoken language as primary and base our written language on that. And I think that's the direction that the color vowel system allows us to take. Also, I think on Thursday is the story approach. So using the language experience approach is a powerful way to help the learner create connections between oral language and print. Any comments you want to make about this?
Yeah, a couple of comments that folks have made. Amina mentioned, she said, are you saying that she needed to connect the language to her life experience?
It's more like she needed to connect the language to the writing. So she could talk about her life experience, fine, but she didn't realize that what came out of her mouth was what was represented on the paper. There were a lot of other things that she didn't have about visual literacy. So, for example, understanding where to find the page number, or what the top of the page means. It means the part that's away from you. How would you know that? What side of the what side of the word is the end of the word? Like questions like this that that we know or we've learned very early on, but we're not. She is from a pastoral culture that and she never went to school and did not know how to read. Right, she was illiterate as a child. I mean, she in her culture she wasn't expected to learn how to read, and all of this writing was just very mysterious to her. And now she's learning how to read, and she loves it. But making the connection between what she was writing and sounding out and the actual English language was very difficult. And if I could have taught her in her native language, it probably would have been easier. I'm not even sure what her native language is. She's from Sudan, and she knows Arabic as a second language. I don't know what her first language was. So hard to say. So, but that's one of the interesting things that yeah, if you showed her a duck and then second said the word verbally, duck. Yeah, so we don't write it, that's fine. But when she doesn't connect the written word with the concept. She didn't connect the written word with the spoken word in that way. So when she says duck after reading duck, that doesn't connect to her to the word duck when she is talking about the duck. Yeah, it's a Helen Keller kind of moment, right? It was just there's a disconnect, and we tried all kinds of things to bridge the disconnect. We would have treasure hunts in class. Look under look under the desk, and people would pass her a secret note, and she would. But it took a while before we were able to get her to understand that the written word was also language. I guess is
Yeah,
what
I mean, I
strange about
can
that.
see how the time you've spent, Robin, and I think everyone can appreciate this. We can look at it as something that mystifies us, and we can keep watching it, but it doesn't mean we're going to understand it. And it
Yeah.
just takes so many observational moments. Well, it also took Hosna that many moments, meaning
Yeah.
how many times had she told you something and that you also wrote it on the board? But it was that moment where the two pieces finally connected, and it was
Yeah.
realizing that there is a connection to be made at all, I think.
Right. Yeah. She didn't even know that there was supposed to be a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
This
So
is
the
me at
couple,
computer usage.
yeah, a couple of comments. So in Rose, you said that's not very common, is it? And I'm curious what it is referring to. Just let me know.
Well, the type 2, I think it's more common than you realize, because there are a lot of people out there who are not I don't even want to say who are not literate. They're not even pre-literate, right? They're not literacy aware. I guess is what I want to say. So they don't know, they don't understand what it's for, right?
I think it's very difficult for all of us who are highly literate, and by definition, everybody here is by definition highly literate. So let's just know that we're always looking to see how we can reveal to ourselves what our assumptions are about learners. And that's really one of our biggest obstacles as teachers. This is what we do, by the way, at English Language Training Solutions. Robin, I'd like to share a little bit of information about what we
I mean,
do for those who
not share. Okay, sorry.
do. Yeah, that's okay.
I want to get to
Because
type 3.
I know, I do too. We all want to get to type 3, and there's some dialogues going over there in the chat. But we want to let you know what it is we've been up to lately. We're up to a lot, and there's some great opportunities that I want to make you aware of. What we do in English Language Training Solutions, we provide teachers with a journey to discover ways to more simply teach in ways that really reach learners. So to simplify teaching, to cut back on how much you talk, to increase the amount of practice students really get high quality practice with good feedback. Our level 1 journey is waiting for those of you who haven't started on that. We have 2 ways to approach that. That is through our self-study or on-demand program that's entirely online. And then our level 1 live practicum that builds on that experience, either as a 1-2 or as a 1 and 2 that you can do together at the same time in the same 4-week period. This is a 5-week course. If you ever feel, raise your hand or raise your figurative hand if you feel tech challenged. Who's tech challenged? If you are tech challenged, we contribute a whole week of this course just to getting you feeling comfortable with the technology of how we study with you online, and the ways that we keep it very personal and real, not just staring or answering multiple choice questions. We're very much about reaching the real person. So that level 1 certificate is a great way in. We have a special this month. This is why we're here, is to let you know about our specials. We have a coupon that will give you 20% off. And I'll even make that the bigger so you can see that 20% off. So just copy or take a picture, write down phonemic 23 for 20% off all of our courses. If you've already taken Color Vowel Basics, don't worry. This applies to our level 2 courses, our workshop with Robin. All of these courses that are in the level 2 journey are all eligible for that 20% off coupon. You can use that now through January 22nd. I will get back to Robin. You're going to get number 3, I promise. But the third thing I want you to know is we so want to see you in 2024 that we've created a little bonus for you for early enrollment. So if you already know you think you're going to register for a course, why not do it by December 12th? And you'll get our early enrollment bonus, and that will include Robin's latest effort and latest publication, which is Word Mazes. We have a book of word mazes featuring high frequency words for and non-moving vowels. You can see those there. We've got a new wonderful material from Lynn Swanda, who is part of her level 3 capstone as a trainer. She's a wonderful trainer speaking tomorrow. She developed these printable Avery labels that are going to be part of that early enrollment bonus pack, where you, especially if you work in a face-to-face classroom, you're going to be able to print them out on Avery labels, cut them up, and place them on your word walls. And you'll see more about that tomorrow. Okay. Over here's a glimpse of that word maze. We'll be sending you the Color Vowel organizer and several other goodies. So just know that if you need an incentive, we're happy to give that to you. Okay. And that's where I'm going to stop right now and invite Robin to come back, because I know we're eager for type number 3. Any questions you have about courses, put in the chat. Jennifer and I are there to help you. Okay, I'm ready. Robin, number 3.
Okay, number 3. Okay, here's Postman and the Bees. Okay, next type. Okay, struggling reader type 3. This is the one that actually merges with native speakers with dyslexia. So they're processing written language in the right hemisphere of the brain, and they have to memorize the shape of the whole word. So in the class, we were sounding out 3-letter words. So we were reading the word rat, at, right? But the student said, without sounding it out, she said, "Oh, I know this one. It's mouse." So what happened here? What did she do? This student is very fluent in English. She's been resident here in the US for at least 20 years, and she's now a US citizen. She passed the citizenship test. She says that she can read, and in fact, she scores high enough on the CASAS test to pass into upper level classes. She says she only needs help with spelling. Can she read? Does this count as reading? So what is she doing that means that she is or isn't reading? She's getting the idea. Is that enough? What does the chat say, Karen?
The chat is, let's see, we got the correct image, but not, I'm having trouble reading myself, but not, I have this thing in the way of my chat.
Oh, okay. So the question is, can this student read? When she sees the word rat, she says mouse.
Amina says she's substituting the word with one that she knows. Patty says she got the correct image, but not the right word.
So how did she get the image if she didn't have the word? This is very mysterious, isn't it?
Right. She looks at the word. There's no hint.
She looks at the word rat, and she doesn't say rat. She doesn't sound it out at all. She's not connecting it with R, A, and T. She's just looking at the shape of the word, and she says, "Oh, I know this word. It's a little mouse." And there's no picture. There's no picture of the animal or anything. So when she's
skipping, so Jennifer Gates says maybe it's skipping the analytical area of the brain.
maybe it is. Oh, Jennifer, how do you know this? All right. All right. Okay, so this is the whole word reading strategy. This is what it looks like, and this is from an article about the MRAI in people with dyslexia, but it's going to be similar. So notice we've got the visual area and the verbal area. What's missing?
Which part is missing?
Well, Jennifer already gave it away.
Logic, math, logical.
Logic, math. So there, she's processing the whole word as a unit. The logical mathematical area. Yeah. So notice that there's no connection between the visual and the verbal areas. It's all blank in between the visual area and the verbal area. Also notice that I have the visual pointing to the right side of the brain. These students are using the right visual, right hemisphere visual which tends to be more holistic and gestalt. And so there's no pathway to get from visual to verbal. So this is what happened. So you start with number one, rat. She sees the word, and she jumps to number two, the meaning. This is not a picture, but remember that we decided this was the concept of rat. And she has this mental image of the creature in her head, and she can't remember the English word for it. And eventually she comes up with mouse. There's no way that she's making any kind of attempt to do what we would call reading of the actual the actual alphabetic characters, right?
But Robin, at the same time, if we could stay on that, Jennifer says, she says, I think instructors would jump to the conclusion that these readers were just guessing, but we know it can't be guessing either, right?
Right, because why didn't she say, bear or, horse
Exactly.
or table,
Or
So,
round, or yeah.
yeah, I mean, so she's not basing her guess on the phonology, on the sounds at all. She knows this word, but she knows the shape of the word, not the sounds of the word. Isn't that weird? Okay, but this is what happens in dyslexia. So if I had, let me illustrate it with the previous, the canonical example we were using. So suppose you had the example, sheep. You see the word sheep, you think of this animal, and you say lamb because because they mean the same thing to you, or you can't think of the word, or something like that. This would work fine if you were learning Chinese. If you were using the Chinese characters, you would see the character, you would think of the meaning of the word. So here is the character that means sheep, and then you would think, okay, you pronounce it, I don't know, yang, or here's the character that means rat or mouse. That notice that in Chinese it doesn't make a difference which one you say. And which is shu, I guess. And if you know Chinese, please correct me. But not a problem, right? You just go straight. You go straight to the meaning, and then you pronounce the word. And because Chinese has so many different pronunciations for the same logograms, because of different dialects, this is actually a useful strategy, because you don't have to get the pronunciation of that. It doesn't matter whether you have the same pronunciation as the person who wrote the letter, or wrote the character, as long as you get the meaning right. So that works very well if you're using logograms, characters like that. But what happens in English? Why is this not a good strategy for English?
Okay, so we want to slow down just a little bit, Robin. Folks are very eager to have a really clear representation of problem number 3. Learner type number 3 is, what's exactly their situation?
They're going from the whole word sheep to the meaning sheep, or the whole word rat to the meaning rat, to the idea of rat, but they say the wrong meaning for the word mouse.
So they're processing the whole word.
They're processing the whole word as a
visual object,
as a unit, as a visual object, right? So
that's in the chat, everybody.
So if you did this, and if you keep doing this in English, what consequences? Oh, let's try this. Can you designate a volunteer? I need a volunteer to read this. You've seen this meme, I think, go around. It's not that this is a bad strategy. We in fact read by whole word strategies all the time, especially speed reading works like this. Not always correct. Who's our volunteer?
I think Rosa's volunteering.
Okay, Rosa, go.
Oh, you're unmuted.
You're muted.
Rosa, you need to unmute. There we go.
Oh, she's still muted.
Yeah, we're still muted. Okay, so the question, Patty, thanks for answering. Others can answer too. How easy is this for you to read? Is this like, sure, a fun, I can do this, or is this nearly just quite taxing for you? Is this difficult? We'd
I
like to
would
know.
love to know. So I would like somebody to read it aloud while you all, the rest of you, follow along and decide, is this hard or easy? So
Yeah.
who's going to volunteer to read it aloud?
Okay,
Was it
Jennifer's raising her hand.
I can
Jennifer's
read it
volunteering?
aloud.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer, go.
Oh, it's interesting. We can't hear you. I thought we could hear you.
Can you hear me, Karen?
Yes, you can
All
go,
right.
Barb. That's
I
Okay,
great.
Barb, you go.
If you can read this, you have a strong mind too. Can you read this? Only some people can. I couldn't believe that I could actually understand what I was reading. The phenomenal power of the human mind, according to a research at Cambridge, according to a researcher at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be in the right place. The rest can be a total mess, and you can still read it
without a problem.
without a problem.
Thank
This
you.
is because, well, it's getting down on my screen here. This is
Yeah.
because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. Amazing. Yeah, and I always thought spelling was important. If you can read this, share it.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is really done something done at Cambridge, but congratulations on getting it. Now, notice though that this is not one of the worst strategies to have, and it's faster than sounding out every single letter, actually. And kids who start off with this strategy and are taught by what's called the look-say method or the whole word method, the Dick and Jane readers actually do better or read faster with a limited vocabulary than the students who are sounding everything out exhaustively and getting stuck on sight words and irregular words. Notice though that it's not always completely accurate. So this is not strong, but rather strange.
Range.
Right? And then up down here, researchers, they actually added an extra agent, so they got it wrong themselves, unless this is some other word that I'm not familiar with. But this is the origin of the researchers in the mid 20th century discovered that the best readers, the fastest readers, didn't sound out the words or didn't look at the words piecemeal or in segments. Instead, they did the whole word at a time. Therefore, we should teach students to read the most efficiently one word at a time. And that created all kinds of political issues. That's why we had Back to Basics and Why Johnny Can't Read and the phonics wars and Hooked on Phonics and so on. And they're still going on. There's a suit right now going on in, I think, either Michigan or Wisconsin about which type of how reading should be taught. And well, I'm not going to get into that, but why is this whole word strategy not sustainable in English once you get past third grade or so? Write your suggestions in the chat and Karen will relay them to us.
So Doug says that the first and last letters are there, you still have to have the letters in the middle, which I think gets at the idea that there are going to be a lot of words that have similar beginnings and endings. So you do have to at some point drill down, especially if the contexts are pretty similar, right?
Right. I get a lot of students who they read the first letter and then they guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jennifer mentioned, you have to encounter a lot of new words when you get into 4th and 5th grade or an advanced English.
Yeah. So how would you ever learn a word that you didn't know already? So we said that we can't read a word that we don't know. Well, once you get into 4th and 5th grade, you have you're reading words that you don't know, and you have to be able to pronounce words that you don't know. What about well, my student who read Mouse instead of Rat, she must have a huge vocabulary of sight words, right? All these words like rat and cat and so on, she has memorized. But what happens when her brain fills up? You know, I mean, you only have so much room in your lexicon, right? This is the problem with Chinese characters, is that you have a limit to the number of characters that it's easy for you to remember. So so what can we do here? We need a sound first approach. So this is the philosophy of the color vowel approach, which is why I endorse it. Take the spoken language as primary, and everything else needs to follow from that. So if you add sound awareness strategies to your conventional phonics classes or reading teaching, you wind up getting both the classic symbol to sound decoding, tapping it out or sounding it out approach, but you also get the other way if you are already aware of the sounds of the words. So student one will have a larger spoken word vocabulary and increased phonological awareness. Student number two was able to connect her own spoken stories with the written version, and student three will have to slow down and notice each sound as she produces it. So what we want to do is increase the phonological awareness in order to improve the reading for dyslexics as well. So if we're going from sound to symbol, we start with suppose we start with our imaginary sheep over here. So if I say sheep, I have to segment it into phonemes. This is the crucial sticking point. So I have to take this one syllable and divide it into 3 sounds: sh, e, and p. Once I've done that, I can then assign letters to each sound and then write the word, right? So so this is the step that is tricky, and this is the step that you notice I don't have an arrow from this step to anywhere in the brain. So the normal reader will be doing it in the analytic area over here. But what do we do with the dyslexic reader or the reader who is using the right side of the brain? If we use phonological awareness, we're using a different part of the brain. We're using the sensory motor strip. So we're using this other intelligence, the motion and feeling intelligence. So we're feeling what our mouth is doing when it's saying each sound. So the word rat only acoustically is indivisible. But if you go back to the original production of the word rat, you can feel that your mouth is in 3 different places when you say the first sound, and then it moves, and then it moves again. And it's the motion to these different articulatory places that allows your brain to divide up the word rat into its component parts. And that's what we want to do with the color vowel approach. Allows us to divide out, to separate out the vowel from the middle of that. And that's one of the hardest things for my students to do. So people with dyslexia, people with aphasia, second language learners can create a new pathway, even if they're using the right hand side of the brain. So if you start here with, well, let's see, I hear the word, I segment and identify the phoneme. So I say the word sheep, then I feel what my mouth is doing, and I figure out what is that vowel, and at that point I can then write the words. So there's evidence that this right side speech, I'm not going to say it's a phonological awareness organ yet. It's not something that Gardner would count as real, but for example, Gabby Giffords is using this in her recovery from aphasia. So if she can do it, our students can also do it. So to sum up, what my research shows is that all of these readers are helped, all of these failures to thrive are helped by adding multimodal strategies and phonological awareness to conventional phonics instruction. So, for example, if you could, the color vowel chart activates the sensory motor area. It uses the verbal intelligence. It involves visual intelligence. It also involves logical mathematical intelligence. And we also have ways of adding musical intelligence and so on. But these are all ways of getting around the problem of when this normal reading pathway doesn't work, and understanding what's going on in the brain helps you figure out why your student is doing these baffling things.
You know, when Robin and I designed that last slide, we started putting arrows all over the place. And I said, you know what, we can't have more than 3. And so, you know, it's just to say that what we've done over the last, and now, you know, Robin and I have been working together along with Shirley, who's in the room, for now for over 20 years, which is pretty exciting. And part of the reason we continue to be ourselves so enthralled with what we do is that we just don't know that much about the brain, but we know when we're able to use a brain-based strategy that works. And I think a lot of you in the room have experienced that.
Well, what's been fun for me is that Karen and Shirley have showed me what works, and then I can say, oh, I know why that works. It's because, you know, you're using this part of the brain or that part of the brain. So it's really a synergistic kind of collaboration.
Folks, I'd like to pause here where we stopped talking, and I always like to round things up with the part that nurtures me, certainly Robin, certainly Jennifer, which is what for you was valuable today. Just one, you know, something you're going to take with you and maybe talk with someone else about, or that you're just going to think about, and what will keep you coming back tomorrow when we discuss and explore how vertical surfaces can be enhanced with color vowel markups and images and strategies, so that they're these very interactive things rather than things we look at in the classroom or the hallway. So that's coming up, by the way. I'll go ahead and show you that in my image. And I would love to hear from folks as we round down this session. Here's what you can expect as you start thinking of your takeaways. What you can expect next is that I'm going to be sending you an email this evening, because you don't receive enough emails from me, I know, but you're going to receive an email from me with a link to the recorded session. Along with that link and finding that recorded session, you're going to see a certificate that you can download and personalize to show that you attended this session. There's a little bit of an honor code there, of course, as we know, because, you know, you were here. And just put that there for you. And you'll also see what else is coming up. Tomorrow we have word walls. Friday is all about those books, including Hosna's book about the bees. So if you were inspired by that breakthrough that Hosna had with Robin, that's a bit of what we're doing on Friday. Thank you. So
Are you saying Friday or Thursday?
I'm sorry, Thursday. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm a day ahead of myself. Today's Tuesday, tomorrow's Wednesday, next day's Thursday. Speaking of Friday, though, I will mention anyone who's interested in going to the Color Vowel conference and submitting a paper to speak at that conference. We're having a Fridays at 5 session to brainstorm what kinds of topics you might want to talk about, or what you want to explore further for a proposal. Okay, so just know that that's there in our teachers community. Some takeaways. I'd love to visit these now. Thank you so much for these. Coming up for the brain. Thank you, Alicia. She says the brain is amazing, and I'm sorry you can't attend tomorrow, but the recorded session will come your way. So thank you for being here. And Leslie, you just realized, oh, we didn't know she was your teacher.
Leslie, turn your camera on. I'll see if I recognize you. Hi.
Sonia, thanks for your comment that different types of learner problems with reading was helpful. I think one thing just to always remind ourselves is we don't have objective tools that tell us which learner type, but thanks to the work that Dr. Barr has done in the past 5 years and with her whole career, we get these glimpses into the factors. And so this really is cutting edge insight that you don't find out there. And you'll learn more about that in the workshop if you choose to join us for that. Patty's comment, my big takeaway was understanding how reading works in the brain and the connection between words and concepts. I agree, you know, that just the concept of sheep just think about that, it's very Sapir-Whorf. How do we even conceive of the concept?
All we like sheep.
Yeah, exactly. Kathy's comment, this last piece was really resonated with me. I see my students' eyes light up when we break down the word and talk about what color it is. Thank you.
I
Friday,
liked all the comments from people who say they have dyslexia and they had no problem reading the scrambled words. That's kind of an illustration of the whole concept, isn't it?
that's
Mhm.
right. Somebody just wrote in, and I want to be sure that we have this answered for you. Teachers, we have a teachers community in our academy. I'm putting the link in right now where you can sign up for free.
Karen, I already
Fridays-
did.
Okay. Fridays at, well, I'm answering Amina's question again, but Fridays at, and any of these free kind of events are posted over there. We have often twice a month, even, sometimes more often. But these are free get-togethers for teachers, typically on Fridays. Okay. Thanks so much. Yeah. And then Jennifer Gates, thanks for the comment. She didn't realize that there's a disconnect between, that disconnect can be so persistent. That it can be the elephant in the room that we really can't see.
It seems so obvious to us because I don't remember ever learning that writing was the written was related to speech, right? But if you don't grow up in that community, you don't learn that.
Yeah. Deb said something neat, after dealing with so many of these problems, it's great to have them identified. Maybe it feels like a validation. You feel like these things are happening, but there's never been a word for it in a way. Sort of like Hosna in reverse. So everyone, I want to thank you. I want to thank also Jennifer, who's on the back end. She's been answering all your questions. You can reach her at customersupport@colorvowel.com. We do love hearing from you, and Jennifer is amazing at getting back to you with all the information you need. I'm going to be keeping these comments and reading through, so I appreciate this, but I'll finish up. Rosa says, my mom can't read the subtitles quickly enough and always asks, why do they take them off and leave the screen empty instead of leaving them? Well, that's how I feel about life. I want the subtitles to last just a little longer always. So thank you, everybody. Great session, and we do look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you, Maureen, for the kind comment there. Elena, I agree, multiple intelligence rocks. We all have it. So see you tomorrow at Word Walls and Bulletin Boards. Same bat time, same bat channel, same Zoom link, actually. Just
cool.
Okay.
but you'll see my email. Okay. Take care, everybody. Have a great evening,
Thank you
morning,
all. It's been fun.
afternoon. Thank you,
Thank
Robin.
you.
Yeah. Be well. Bye-bye.